Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the level design and Hitman guiding players in a non-linear sandbox game. Today we're going to talk you through the journey that we had with our tutorial and the guidance system that we implemented in the latest installment of Hitman. And this doesn't work. Excellent. My name is Jakob, and I'm a principal level designer at IO Interactive. I've been there for 13 years, made a number of Hitman games, Hitman Contracts where I was a scripter, Hitman Blood Money where I was a scripter, and I also worked on the tutorial. And then Kane and Lynch, where I turned into level design and became owner of the tutorial again. And then we had Hitman Absolution, where I became the lead level designer and also did some work on the tutorial. And then last, as principal level designer, I also designed the tutorial. So that's what I'm going to talk about today.
Yes, and my name is Mette, and you can all hear me, that's great. I'm a level designer at IO, and while Jakob, he was making amazing titles, I was going to school, like literally. I started in 9th grade when Jakob started at IO. But since then, I've gone to the University of Aarhus, where I studied interaction design, where I got my master's. Then I went to DADU, where I was a game designer, and I went to Academy of Art. I produced a few tablet titles, and I learned how to paint a little. And then after my thesis, I got my dream job at IO, where I designed the guide. Yes. The agenda for today, first of all, we would like to introduce Hitman, of course, and then the level Showstopper, which takes place in Paris, which is the big level that we launched in March. Then we want to talk about the closed alpha report, which was quite a pillar in our development of Hitman. Then we want to talk about the mission, which is also going to function a little bit as an agenda, where we talk about the tutorial and the guide. And then hopefully we'll have time for questions.
Yes. All right, so what is Hitman? For those of you who don't know, Hitman is about Agent 47, the guy on the screen here. He's a highly trained assassin, and he travels the world and kills people for money. The game is a third-person creative stealth action game. And it's an episodic game, which means that we're releasing it in episodes, roughly a month in between. The first one went live March, and that allows us to engage with the community in a whole new way, where we can look at the content and actually react to what they're saying about the game and how they play it and what they like and what they don't like. And also today we're actually releasing a new episode, so there's a launch party. We just shipped it 3 hours ago. The game is a lot about disguises and social stealth. That's one of the key mechanics we have in it. It's about infiltrating and going close to a target under disguise. We also have a very, very, very important part of the game, and that is the freedom of approach. We don't tell you how to complete the missions. It's almost like a puzzle game where you have to figure out, how do I get away with murder? So if you want to use explosives, that's one thing, that's fine. If you want to use poison, that's fine. If you want to use your sniper rifle, that's also fine, just as long as the guy dies. These are the 5 games that led up to Hitman. I just want to talk about Blood Money and Absolution for a bit, because from a level design perspective, these two are different. Blood Money had these open sandbox levels where, again, you had a lot of freedom of approach. And then Hitman Absolution, we did more kind of small levels, like 70, and then divided by checkpoints. So they were a lot easier to kind of digest for the player. But this time we wanted to combine the sandbox missions from Blood Money with the AI fidelity and the game mechanics, and that had a lot higher fidelity than what we saw in Blood Money. So we wanted to combine the two into Hitman. And just to show you guys what it looks like, I have a trailer that will kind of explain a bit.
The essence of a sandbox game like Hitman is freedom of approach. Where you go, how you infiltrate, who you become.
Hey, you!
Knowing which disguises give you access is key.
Okay, then, get out.
But beware, some individuals are more observant than others.
Okay, who are you? Hey! Hey! Stop!
Be prepared to improvise.
Where is he? You see him, anyone?
Yeah, where the hell did he go?
As you experiment with your playstyle,
We lost him!
each hit can go from bloody murder to a genuine masterpiece of assassination. Complete mastery of a level is rewarded. As your skills evolve over time, so do your options. Prepare equipment in advance and plan the perfect hit. New locations will appear over time. You will travel the world. New missions, new targets. Some targets only ever surface once, for a limited time. When they are gone, they are gone forever.
Yes. Our story today starts with our alpha build. This was the first time the public outside of IO actually got to play the game. And we, of course, weren't finished, but we created this palace that you see here. It's a 4-story building located in Paris, and there's a surrounding garden, and this is the entire level. The palace has a complete interior, so there's a lot of square meters to kind of knock yourself around with. The mission for Agent 47 is to infiltrate the palace, to eliminate Viktor Novikov and Dalia Margolis, the 2 targets. When the mission starts, you start out front, and then you're on your own, so you have to figure out how to pull it off. Viktor Novikov, he roams the ground floor where he is attending his fashion show. He's a fashion brand owner, and then on the side he's running this spy community where they sell secrets in this secret auction on the top floor of the palace where Dalia is. And then in the alpha build, we sent this out to the players. They have a lot of things to do in the palace. There's a lot of items, hammers, disguises, fire extinguishers, fireworks setups, a diorama. There's escape helicopters, rat poison in the basement. So there's tons of options and ways to go about completing your mission. So that we gave to all the players. But what we got back was that some of them, they actually did fine.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Real considerate. Am I staying out my shot?
But others, they did it like this.
Step right in, sir.
That is Viktor Novikov, head of Sanguine and ringleader of Iago. Quite the resume.
What?
Get out of my sight! You son of a...
Yeah, so Dalia and Novikov 1 and Hitman 0. Yeah, they didn't use the palace, right?
Yes, and then we had the closed alpha. We were really proud of what we were presenting to the players in this build. The closed alpha is the first time we went live. Hitman is a live game, so we wanted to do that as early as possible in the process. And this was absolutely the biggest user base ever who got to play our level. We knew maybe this would be a little bit tricky because there was a lot of stuff in this level, and we knew that they didn't have a tutorial, we didn't have any guidance, and we were of course working on both at this time. We already had prototypes. And our fears were confirmed, and maybe with a little bit on top. They didn't really have a good understanding on how to navigate. They had a hard time getting an overview, and they just generally found it very difficult to approach. We were prepared for this, kind of. But what we were not prepared for was the fact that they felt that the level was empty. When you are presented with such a big level, it can be a little bit intimidating, and you can feel like a tourist sort of just being dumped there, and that can be a little uncomfortable. And we realized that maybe they were just presented somehow with the tip of the iceberg. Maybe they didn't know how to find all this stuff, because we knew it was there. We were pretty sure because we put it there. So maybe we should do something in order to make sure that they could find it. So the direction became make the best Hitman tutorial ever and teach the players to think like Hitman. And also design a level guidance system that would help them find the rest of the iceberg. But it was very important for us that we wouldn't like shove it down their throat. We didn't want to force their hand. So this became the mission. Wanted to teach them how to operate the game, wanted to teach them the Hitman fundamentals of the game, and we wanted for them to be able to set their own goals. Because for us, that really felt like that was what it meant to think like a Hitman, to kind of, find those possibilities, those weak points, and think, hey, I'm going to use that later. And then the second part became, well, we need to show them the iceberg. We need to find a way to illuminate it. And we need to encourage replay while we do this. So yes, now Jakob is going to talk a little bit about the tutorial.
Yes. At this point, we had the Showstopper that you just saw, and then we had a prototype of the tutorial. And the tutorial is, the idea is that it's set in the past. It's 20 years before the game. It allows us to peek into the background of Agent 47, where we've never been there before in the story, so we would also give something new to the fans about 47 and how he was trained and where he's coming from. So the idea was to create the ICA, which is the agency that employs Hitman, to create their training facility. And what they do is that they create these training mock-ups where you could then, get taught like Hitman would be taught. So what we did for this prototype is that imagine that this is all the mechanics in a Hitman game. So the way we looked at them was that, okay, they can be roughly divided into these 5 categories. We have the ever-present ones. We have the item-dependent ones. Ever-present ones is like running and crouching and all the stuff he can do without, it's like you and the controller that can do. Item-dependent ones, that's things that require specific items that unlock new kind of actions with 47. And then we have the environmentally dependent ones, such as agility, drain pipes, cover systems, and all of that. And then we get to the juicy bits, which are the NPC-dependent ones. Of course, you need people to subdue and kill and all of that stuff. And then on the far right, we have the NPC alert behaviors, which is the when they get angry, right? There's something that we also want to do. So what we did was that we looked at this, and then we created a number of test chambers, where the idea was that each chamber would then be an isolated kind of proving ground for a specific feature. So we could teach you how to throw stuff, we could teach you how to subdue people, all of that, and then have them in small compartmentalized chambers that wouldn't affect each other, because what we saw in the Showstopper is that when they get spotted, then the entire thing cascades, and then they affect the entire level by getting spotted in one corner. So here we could harness this chaos and have it under control. And then we gave that to the users, and we user tested it, and it was pretty fine. They got the idea. But then we looked at the level, and it's like, okay, this tutorial is not really representative of the game, right? It's like we're distilling it into some very simple mechanics, but when we add everything together, the complexity just explodes. And the tutorial didn't do this, so they weren't really any better. They just got a little more time to actually kind of try it. So it was back to the drawing board. We sat down and looked at each other and said, okay, we need to do something about this, because we have to change the way we think about this tutorial. So we came up with the mantra, you fight as you train. It's an old saying in the army that you fight as you train. And the idea is that once you get stressed, you lose all ability to reason. So we need to have all the reactions on you kind of deeply inside you, so you don't have to think about the stuff, you just do it. So we have to create as real a training scenario as we can. Then we need to build sandboxes, because that's what the game is. So we condensed the Showstopper idea into a tiny sandbox, which is the drawing that you're seeing here. This is a paper prototype I made where I just cut up papers until I get the shape that I want. But this is what we need to do. Then we need to team up with the user team, user research team, and do rapid prototype testing, where we just do it every second week, punch out a new build, try it out again with a smaller group of people. And then we need to stop calling it the tutorial, and instead we're going to rebrand it to the Prologue. And now I have to say the Prologue for the rest of this talk. That's going to be a challenge. Because this is something different. Because people came to me and say, okay, Jakob, we're going to put this in the tutorial, and we're going to put this mechanic in the tutorial. They had this linear compartmentalized mentality about the whole tutorial, so we had to call it something else. So what we came up with was a new structure for the opening of the game, Part 1, the arrival, where we kind of open up the scene, the whole training session. Part 2, the training, where we learn Agent 47, and the player mostly, how to be Agent 47. And then we have a final test, which is the second sandbox of the prologue, where we will test his skills. I'm just going to go through each of these parts. The opening of the game, that's this helipad, and this is the ICA training facility. It's a concrete construction far up north, and 47 is just dropped there by a helicopter, and then he's on his own, and so is the player. So we don't tell you how to do anything. Nothing really happens here. It's just nice and cold. And then your job as the player is to figure out, okay, I'm in control, and then you need to find the door up here. Sorry, things are getting ahead of myself here. There you go. So you just have to... I'm out of power. I'm not. So you have to find the door that leads inside the facility. I am out of power. Can I borrow yours?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry about that. All right, so one step back. 47 on the helipad. Learn how to navigate, learn how to use the camera. Enter the facility. Then we have part 2, which is the guided training. And this is where the juicy bit of the teaching actually happens. To the untrained eye, this looks exactly like the drawing I shown before, and it kind of is. But this time we actually sat down and then we found the meaningful mechanics to learn the player in order for him to kind of do a hit. So this was about infiltrating, eliminating, and exfiltrating. So instead of just going through all the mechanics one by one, we picked the ones that you need in order you pick the ones that you need in order to complete a mission. And then we created a story for the mission that you have to infiltrate this yard in order to eliminate the owner, who's an art thief. And then all of a sudden, there was kind of a small story there all of a sudden. And then it turned into that these missions that they do at this ICA facility are actually reenactments of former hits. So what we did next was, okay, but we need to add the rest, right? Because it's a sandbox. So we have all the things surrounding this as well. And then in order to help the player do this, we then use a guide, which is kind of pointing you towards the next point in your mission example here. So the requirements for the Prologue training here was that it has to be a real sandbox mission. We've just been through that. We need a very, very robust guide, because at this point, you haven't played any Hitman so far. So we had to make the guidance system, the thing that tells you what to do, very, very robust, because things can go wrong, right? And in my experience, there's 3 different ways to play a game, right? You do as we expect you to, or you do your own thing because you want to see how far can you push this game until it breaks, and that's fine with us, because then you're in on it and you're breaking it on purpose just to see what happens. That's fine. But then you have the last group of people, which are these people who really wants to play your game, but they somehow mix it up and they get confused. It doesn't really work out for them, and those are the ones that we really have to take care of, because those are the ones that's gonna throw away the controller and say, I'm done with this, and then. Yeah, so those are the ones that I'm very, very careful about doing this guide for. So it had to be taking into consideration that you would play it backwards or infiltrate in a different way. Then it had to be easy but not boring. We have a wall of difficulty in the Showstopper we learned. So again, instead we need to kind of get them on board and have them, get them rolling and actually have a small success experience here to begin with. The only way to fail is death. You can't play the training mission wrong, right? That would be kind of weird in a way that we punish you severely. So the only way to actually get punished is if you die. We do not feature cripple you, which means that we're not cheating with what 47 can do. He is as real as he is when you play the Showstopper. That's a very important thing to us, because otherwise you wouldn't train as you fight as you train. And then we only want you to kill the target, because Agent 47 is actually a very, very professional assassin. So in the fantasy of a lot of, especially the fans, then he is only going for the targets. He doesn't kill the cleaning person to get the disguise. He finds other ways. A quick breakdown of the first playthrough here, right? We start outside the yard, and again, it's made of plywood. It's not a real yard. It's something they built inside this facility. And you're told off by the guards. You can't enter here, they say. All right, cool, I need to go in. You do some infiltration. You do some agility. You go into cover. And things are prompted using different systems. We have this prompt up there. And then you subdue the mechanic. You drag him away, you get his outfit, and now you're on your way onto the yard. Here we push a sign about threats. We had a hard time getting people to understand these dots, which is kind of the easiest way for us to actually communicate that these guys know who you are, so they can see through a disguise. You have to be very careful about that. And as a result, we saw people infiltrating, and what they did was that you have the guy over here who's a threat. If he sees you, then he's going to get angry, and then people were gluing themselves to the car over here, so that really worked well. We teach you how to use instinct to locate the target. We follow the target, and then he is, 47 is rejected again, so okay, my disguise is no longer valid up there. I need to get a new one, so now you need to disguise yourself as a crew member, and here we actually... the throwing thing wasn't really a part of the original pan, but we added it because it's really fun. So the poor guy, he takes a wrench to the head and then bing, and into the freezer. So hide body and yet another disguise. As 47, he is taking on disguises. He opens up new options in the missions where he can use the disguises to his advantage. So in this place, he's blending in, which means that he's taking the role of someone in the game. And in this case, he's taking a role as the bartender, and the target is standing right there in front of him. So now we're very, very close. But as you saw before, if I just get out my gun here and just start shooting, then it wouldn't work. So we can't do that with the player. We follow the target into his office, and it's a bit hard to see, but there's actually a bodyguard denying you access here. So again, you're denied access. Okay, your disguise is not good enough for this either. You sneak around, climb the window, and we prompt you for cover again. We prompt you for inventory, how to shoot and aim. And then the target is off, and then it's about exfiltrating. It's about leaving the yard. No one notices this when you shoot the guy. And then once you're off, then it's find another way off because because of the threat, and then crowbar, lock doors, and eventually complete the mission. So this playthrough was designed in a way where we knew from Absolution that we had to ask the user to do things several times in order for that to kind of stick and become something he would do without thinking about it. And in this case, we had 3 times we told you about threats, and 3 times we told you about sentries, because that's core of the design of the level design. This is this whole who has access where, the whole disguise gameplay. Twice cover, hide body, and change disguises, and some climbing through windows. And then once we had down here we have the gun, right? Which is, interesting in terms of what we think is important, right? So we put a lot of effort into getting the players to understand the disguise gameplay. After that, the training wheels are off. We have a final test. No guidance, in a way, but not heavily tutorialized. And then we introduce you to the player guidance system. In this mission, Agent 47 have to eliminate a guy who's being flown away in this jet, and you have to figure out how to get to him, and that involves using the ejection seat. And it also wraps up our story. So the whole training at the ICA, one thing we do when we start the mission, that we meet Diana, and then here when we're over, we're back at the helipad, and we talk to Diana. We give 47 his name, and eventually he leaves, and he is on his way into this Showstopper 20 years later. So now the flow looks like this. That's fine. We had the arrival, we had the training, we had the final test, and then the Showstopper. And people were playing this and trying it out, and it worked fine. So that kind of checked off the Hitman fundamentals. Excellent. So now they know how to infiltrate, they know how to eliminate the target, they know how to exfiltrate, and that's fine. But we were still lacking these set their own goals, because we really felt that was important for them in this giant Showstopper context. They had to figure out how to kind of figure out what they wanted to do. So if we just looked at mechanics again from before, as I said before, we handpicked the mechanics we thought was important enough for you to actually put in the training, but we didn't put everything in, which means that there was something left out. The most important ones were actually this one, the NPC alert behaviors. Again, we saw people getting stressed out when the AI became angry at them, when they were trespassing, when they were discovered doing something bad. So this was very much about, they haven't actually seen this. So when things go wrong in the Showstopper, they're still going to see new things they haven't tried before. So they needed more training. So we literally asked them to play the level again. And we give them a different briefing. That was the idea. We sat down, okay, so we need to give them a new briefing. We need to explain them that now they have to do it again. And people were like, okay, again? And the idea was that before we had the guided playthrough with the guide, but this time we wanted them to kind of seek out other things in the mission, again, set their own goals, find these other things. So we created a challenge prototype, which was an alternate version of the yard. I just stripped out the guidance system that was on top of it, and then inserted some items, and we just had a vanilla version of the yard. And we created a challenge paper handout because we decided that, okay, this fits very well with our challenge system, because we hadn't talked about that for in the player's perspective yet. And the challenge system is the way that you progress in the game. You level up your locations instead of leveling up Agent 47. This is how you unlock all the good stuff, fancy explosives and fancy sniper rifles. So this would also be a great opportunity for us to actually show the player the challenge system. So we designed a group of challenges for the player that would be deliberately simple and easy. And they would also be deliberately kind of revealing about themselves. So find the rat poison on deck 0, I think it's called. Disguise as the yard crew in level 0. Then we have eliminate drown the target in the toilet. And the tricky part about that is that actually requires the rat poison. So that's the thing you would have to find out for yourself. Generator, use that to distract the guard. Fiberwire the target instead of just shooting him. Disguise yourself as the target's guest. So we kind of pointed you in a lot of different directions inside the game as you were playing this. We threw in some extra items, so when you start up, then 47 is placed in front of a table with some explosives, a lockpick, some coins, and then behind him we had assault rifles and shotguns, so we could kind of give you all the tools that we kind of wanted you to play around with and get an understanding of how the game worked. There was still tutorialization in this version. We created these, we used the pop-ups because as before, this is the same pop-up you saw with the threat. But this time it was telling you about how to place explosives in the world. So whenever you picked up an explosive, this would pop up only 2 times in the lifetime, and then it would disappear forever. So even if you kind of tried it again a bit later, then you wouldn't get this. Then off to user test. And the first prototype was just a piece of paper with these 10 challenges, right? So it's like they played it, the mission started, and they say, okay, now you get this piece of paper and these 10 challenges, and you have to complete some of them, and then complete the mission again. And then all of a sudden, we saw them roaming around the yard. They actually began to set goals for themselves, right? So they picked a couple of challenges, and then they began to explore the yard to find these solutions for these challenges they were using. And as they did that, they actually stumbled on the other things in the challenges. So all of a sudden, they were connecting the dots in their head. They began to, okay, so there's also the generator over there. So armed with the knowledge of the first playthrough, the layout of the yard, then we actually had them kind of go nuts here. And some of them, they actually, because we then later on created, so it would prompt you again if you wanted to train more when you did this. And because there were still unchecked challenges, of course, some people had to go back because they had to find them all. We also learned that the setting was very, very tolerant. It's okay to do experiments in this place because, as I said before, when the Paris fashion show level kind of cascades into chaos, it feels very expensive. You're breaking something very, very, very expensive. Whereas here, it's a plywood yard, right? That's fine. So that worked really well. Plus the whole training metaphor that he is there 47 to get better. That actually also resonated very well for these people. And then, last but not least, we also got into the NPC reactions, where they provoked the NPCs in ways that would be very, very hard for us to actually tutorialize and use the real gameplay without heavily scripting it. So they got the reactions from the characters in the game as they would react in the Showstopper. So again, we taught them something real, something that would be exactly the same when they would be playing it inside the Showstopper. So this is the final version we ended up with. The arrival scene, a guided playthrough, and then again the freeform playthrough, and then the final test. And that then allowed us to check off this one. So how it goes.
Yes. Let's see if this one works now. Yes, it does. Thank God. Okay, so now we're back and standing in front of the Showstopper. We're a little bit better prepared this time. We got a nice suit. We still got a silly hat. Oh, sorry. But things will be fine now. So now we just have to concentrate on making these experiences visible, as I mentioned about this iceberg that we had to illuminate somehow. And if you look at other games that are doing the same, they often make quests. If we look at a quick breakdown of a quest, you often have a guy saying, hey, I have information for you, there's something cool over there, you can go and get it. You travel great distances, and you may find a clue that will then unlock a conversation that you can have with a person somewhere else. You'll go and find this person, and engaging in this conversation will activate maybe a sequence or something that will then lead you to a new cool location where there's a boss fight. And when you're done with the boss fight, you will get the treasure. This is a classic breakdown. Not all games, the Sandbox games, are of course doing this, but this is how one of these could look. And if we look at what really defines these types of quests, they are often story dictated. They have this checkpoint structure often. Some kind of clue will unlock something that will unlock something, and that's completely okay. Often they are a part of, or they are like a big epic quest of sorts that will maybe go on for a longer run, and they have these unique endings. Now if we look at how quests would maybe look like in Hitman, and if we look at Hitman in general, it's not story dictated. That was kind of one of the goals for Hitman, that we didn't want to make it story dictated, wanted to make it more free. Anything can happen at any given time. This is something that's a little bit frustrating sometimes as a level designer, but also what makes this game so awesome and unique. Anything can just happen anytime. You can kill everyone. And that's actually a problem when you're making a quest, because someone could just go missing. We want to encourage replay, and often these big unique quests, they want to give you this one really, really cool experience. Of course, we have lots of stories that can be replayed, but in general, this is more about that one time when you meet it that's going to be really awesome. And of course, all our quests have to end with target eliminated. We're not looking at unique endings necessarily. Well, for each mission, that is sort of your goal. We want you to kill the guy, get out of there. So. We want you to kill, and we want you to do it again and again. And when we look at this kind of structure, we realize that it was strangely applicable to the movie Groundhog Day. Don't know if any of you in here have seen Groundhog Day. I'm guessing maybe you have. It's from the 90s. It's a great movie starring Bill Murray, who is trapped in a time loop. He has to experience the same day again and again and again. Yes, and when you realize that you have to do it again, like in the tutorial again, really, it can give you that kind of emotion that's going on in his face. But there's also these really, really positive sides to it, because all of a sudden you get this amazing control, because you know what's going to happen at any given time. You know exactly when that waitress is going to walk through the door. You know exactly when Novikov is going to go smoke, and you know just where the sniper barge is. So this can be an incredible, empowering tool that we had to use in a nice way. But you can also design it in a bad way, where this constant recognition of patterns can become a little bit unbearable, maybe to the point of you just wanting to kill yourself or rebel for the sake of rebelling. That's the negative side of it, and we didn't want to, of course, design for that. So, if we look at Groundhog Day quests, we knew that they had to be optional. That was one of the big problems that Bill Murray is facing, that he's feeling trapped. We don't want to give you the trap feeling. It had to be something nice that you could do if you wanted to. We want them to be flexible, because anything can happen. You can kill everyone and anything, and you can do whatever you want. So it's a playground. We wanted it to continue being a playground while still having this sort of having this guide there. And then we needed to be consistent. Again, you need to know exactly when Novikov is going to go smoke. That is really, really important. So, with these things in mind, let's look back at our little quest breakdown and see what it would look like if we try to shove that onto Hitman. You probably don't want to walk up to the guy and say, hey, do you know how I can kill Novikov? Or you probably want to hear two people talking about a secret meeting somewhere, or some guy who's in town that no one has met yet, so you can easily take his place. We don't want you to travel great distances. We want you to infiltrate. Instead of like classic sandbox games, are often very, very large. Ours are large for Hitman, but we want you to really engage in the space that is there and not spend hours traveling. Clues are fine. We can take that directly. We can have conversations with people. That's okay. We could use that in our quests, but we want you to be incognito when you do it. We want you to use social stealth, change disguises, and so on. And we can use cutscenes. Sequences are fine, as long as you can get out of them very fast. And there's no cheating, because everything needs to be consistent. That was one of the rules. So we cannot teleport you. We cannot just end the next part of the sequence somewhere in the back of the garden. That's not okay. We don't have boss fights. We don't do that now. And for the treasure chest, we would like to make sure that we leave the player in a spot where they know what to do next, but we don't want to hand everything to them. Again, we want an autonomous player, we want real hitmen, and we want to keep encouraging that. So, Hitman quests became opportunities, because that is what they were. They were opportunities to get close to your target. This is an example of an opportunity. This is the Helmut Kruger or the male model opportunity, where you can listen in on these two stylists, I don't know if you can see them, who's talking about Helmut Kruger, this new model in town. And he kind of looks like you, which is really practical. And when you run around in this world and you can listen in on these conversations, and this is where we have the opportunity revealing. Again, you can't just walk up and say, hey, tell me how to become a male model, because I really want to kill someone. We need to let you sort of feel sneaky and listen in on people who are having this conversation and really empower you in this Groundhog Day. So we needed some kind of system where you would still choose to track it, and we wanted to have a system that will, again, illuminate the iceberg, show you this is interesting, this is something that you can use. So we have the opportunity revealing that then becomes opportunity revealed, where you can then track it directly and say, yes, this sounds great. And of course, this is there's volumes and stuff, so if you run away, it's fine. Nothing's going to happen, and it's going to be available for you later in your menu, because we really want you to play and not like stick around if you feel like you have to. Yes, so here you come into the menu where Diana will give you her briefing and explain to you why this is such an important opportunity, because here you can take Helmut Kruger's place, obviously, and then have a secret meeting with Dahlia, who's one of your targets. And these are the different opportunities that we have in the level. All the blue ones will lead to Dahlia, the orange ones will lead to Novikov. We wanted you to be able to just browse through it. Again, we want to show you content, and this is such a great way to show you content. Instead of just saying we have a huge level, there's lots of stuff, have fun, we can say, well, it's a huge level, there's lots of stuff, have fun, and you can just go in and choose one of these if you want a little tour. Again, if we use the tourist metaphor, because these will definitely take you around the whole level. So if we continue, you find Helmut Kruger, that's one of your opportunity steps. You have to investigate him, find out what he's up to. This is one of the clues that we have from the quest breakdown. And you hear that he's on the phone with Dahlia, and he's planning to meet her, and she says, call me back later. So I will tell you then where the meeting is. And that's also practical. Then you become Helmut Kruger and get rid of the body, because that's part of it, right? We don't tell you to get rid of the body. That's something that you can just do. We just tell you to become Helmut Kruger. Then we ask you to call Dahlia. You find her phone, or his phone, and then you call her and you say, hey, you want me to come up now? And she's like, no, it's essential that you walk the runway. We want you to have a little fun while doing this. So You get your makeup on, and in the classic style of Hitman, you can also just subdue that poor stylist instead. You get your Hitman on, you get your makeup on, and then you have to walk the catwalk. Yes, and you walk the catwalk. I'm not going to show the video. You have to go and play it. So you walk the catwalk, and then Dahlia thinks that's awesome, so now you can go and meet with her. And this is actually where we're going to sort of step back and say, great, you've earned it. Now you're alone with her, and you can do whatever you want. Her assistant is leaving. She's great, Helmut, good to see you. And then you can sit down and do all this role play with a huge conversation. And you can just, take your time, think about what you want to do. Or you can just shoot her in the throat. I realized this is a bit extreme. I didn't notice I was aiming at her throat. There's also a nice poison opportunity. I can really recommend playing this one. It's lots of fun. So, when we design opportunities, which is also a really important lesson learned, we're also designing how to fail it. Again, we have a pretty extreme environment. It's very organic. Anything can happen. And that means that this guide needs to be flexible, and we need to then say when you can't do it anymore. Because what if you accidentally dump his body with the outfit into the river? Then it's gone, right? You can also just meet Helmut while being him. That's also a little strange. You can also shoot the people who's going to reveal it. Then you're not going to hear about it, and then we can't really say that we can guide you anymore because we don't really have our reveal anymore. That's lost forever. But in this case, you can actually still play it. The guide will sort of shut down and say, "Well, now we can't do this anymore." But you can keep going if you know it by heart. Yeah. So. Around Paris, we have a bunch of opportunities spread out. You saw them in the menu, and these are some of the points where you can listen in on conversations, all the yellow ones for Novikov, and in this case, also all conversations. And this is an example of a static reveal. This is the guest list that will tell you which room Sheikh Al-Ghazali is living in, and will then help you become him, basically. This is from the other side. Yeah, we have them spread out. And we also, the opportunities allows us to show you some really cool sites. The pavilion here in the garden is one of those cool sites. And you can also have this really awesome moment where you can blend in as a bodyguard and here participate in the super secret meeting and then get a little alone time with Novikov afterwards. So, sorry, that was very loud. The opportunities allowed us to really show the players the iceberg. But now we really had to make sure that we were still encouraging replay. Now this led us to some design principles, and I may say up front that we broke all of these, and that is why we have them. A lesson learned. Information should never be a prerequisite for progression. An example could be in the Helmut Kruger opportunity where you hear about the meeting. In the beginning, when we did this, Kruger would only drop the phone if you had heard about the meeting. There would be no phone unless you knew about it. That's not a cool way to fix things. And of course, we fixed it very quickly, made sure that wouldn't happen again, because that doesn't support consistency. That was one of our rules. And be very mindful of this. If you're doing anything similar, make sure that you use real things in the world, use items, use anything else. Just don't use information if you want this playground. Opportunities should let go before the kill. Again, I kind of mentioned it before. We want this autonomous player. We wanted them to have fun. But this also brings me back to the whole fail condition part. Let's say that we told you to kill Dahlia. Well, we told you to kill her in a very specific way. We told you to listen to some of the conversation and then stand up and shoot her. That means that you have to fail the opportunity if the player does anything else. And that is kind of, that's a tall order, and you shouldn't do that to your players. So think about what you're actually doing when you make these type of guides, because you may end up giving your player a really bad experience. The opportunity should always be available, even without the guide. Yeah, that's just, again, the consistency. You don't want the guide to be dictating anything. We don't want the story to dictate anything. We want the level to dictate it. We want the player to be able to be in control, and not the other way around. And then we added some technical changes to support this. We added the persistent bool, which brings me back to the phone. Once you've heard it the first time, the persistent bool will become true, and that means that, and this is across all playthroughs, so when you go back, he will definitely have that phone. We also use this for all of the reveals. So if you've heard it once, you never have to reveal it again. You can still go over and listen to them, and the widget will show up and all that stuff, because we wanted players to feel that consistency in the HUD design as well. But you don't have to. You can just skip that step, go right ahead. And we added Intel HUD message. We had Intel all along, but it wasn't very prominent. So we decided to push it a little bit to make sure that players felt like they had that option as well, instead of just using opportunities. I'll show you an example in a second. And then we added different levels of guidance. So you can decide if you want full opportunities, if you want to have this minimal version where we don't give you the marker in the world, but only the objective. And it's up for you to find out how you want to do it. Yes. And this is an example of Intel. This is fireworks schedule. You read it, view Intel, take you to the menu, and here you have a description. These are kind of all the little parts of the opportunities. And if you are that type of player who just wants to investigate on your own, we encourage you to use this instead. The compromise, yes. I call this a compromise and not the perfect solution, because it really is a compromise, and it's something that we keep adjusting. What is the most important part? Is it the sandbox or is it the guidance? And then we also have replay value on top of that. So, fancy. So this is something that you constantly have to adjust, because there's always some really, really cool idea about some narrative part that would be great to do, and then you have to think about, well, what would that do to Sandbox? And then what would that do to replay value? And this is something that we do all the time. It's not that we made up our minds and then we said, go, everyone, this is a template, design. Every time we have a new opportunity idea, we sit and we talk about this. Every time we add a step to an opportunity, we talk about this. This is a constant readjusting. And it's something that we're still working with, thanks to our episodic model. We can keep adjusting this. So yes. So we managed to show them the iceberg and still encourage replay in a balance that we were happy with. And we got really, really positive feedback. We're really, really excited about this. And we were also personally very happy with the result. So that was awesome. It seemed that they managed to find the iceberg, which is exactly what I wanted to do, and it felt like they were prepared to find it, so that was awesome. Yes.
Yeah, so we just want to wrap up with some learnings that we made. You fight as you train turned out to be very true for us. It turned out to be the right way to teach people how to play Hitman. Make it as real as possible, and we just used the right space for that, because if we had done this in Absolution and asked you to play the opening of that once more, that would kind of break down, because that's the story mission, right? So you would kill an important person, that you would have to do it again, and then it kind of loses all meaning. But in this case, we managed to create these sandboxes that would actually behave as the real game, because it was the real game. We like prototyping a lot. It worked really, really well for us. Here we teamed up with the user research department, as I said, and then we did rapid prototyping. So I would punch out a build, run down, and then have it evaluated the same day. And then 2 weeks later, we would do it again. And then paper versions. I am a believer in paper versions of anything before you go digital, because it's a lot easier to cut your paper in half and just paint on it. If we do a live game, then go live early. This closed alpha was the first time people outside IO had contact with the player, with our game, and that is also what allowed us to do these pretty dramatic changes to the tutorial because we all of a sudden we saw a lot of problems that we could fix before we shipped. So highly recommended, because this is also a kind of internal fight as you train exercise, because all of a sudden we have to release content outside, and we have to make sure that we have servers, that we have deployment methods, that we have the development team behind it, the online team. So all of this became the same for ourselves. We had to do it the right way. Oh, sorry.
Yes, and as I mentioned before, adding a guide in a game like Hitman means designing fail conditions. Please remember it if you're ever in the same situation as us. It's just really important, and it saves a lot of heartache to do it as fast as possible. And then sandbox guidance means compromises. I already said that a lot, and I'll say it again because it's important. But it's okay. It's okay with compromises. They're actually pretty great. It really makes you wonder a lot. It makes you discuss a lot and talk about what is actually the core experience that we want to create with this game. Why are we doing it? And the constant adjustment keeps you sharp. Yes. That was our take on how to guide the player in a sandbox game. Thank you.
Yes, as usual, as you know, there is time for questions. So if you have some, then please raise your hand. There's one in the back there.
I'm sorry about the sound, by the way. I hope you can all hear still. You're all okay.
Hey, okay. So, two questions for you guys. First, I've noticed that the list of opportunities is breakdown by color, but I was wondering if you guys are doing by difficulty as well. And if you do that, how are you differentiating those? And the second one, about the guns blazing approach. Is it a no-no from the get-go, completely out of the game, or are there going to be opportunities that actually allow the player to do something like that?
Allow the player to do something like what? Sorry.
Guns blazing. All guns blazing.
Oh, guns blazing. Well, you can always go guns blazing. I mean, you mean like from the get-go? So like a guide just saying go guns blazing?
Accounting in one of the opportunities that you...
Oh, so like
showcase.
As in we're not just like we're like encouraging you to go guns blazing. Well, we kind of have this no kill rule in the opportunities, which may sound weird since it's a Hitman game, but we really want you to be able to choose your own style, and we don't want to pressure you to do anything you don't want to do. But I think I mean, you can really go guns blazing if you want to. And we also don't want you to limit yourself to opportunities. We want you to go out there and have fun. As a general rule, we try to avoid telling you to kill a lot of people because some people really want to do the opportunities but still go silent assassin and do it in their own way.
And your first part of the question was?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I was wondering if the opportunities are differentiated in difficulty by you guys, and if you reward the player specifically for completing one opportunity over the other.
Can I start? Yeah. Well, we have. If let's say that we have an opportunity that we know is very, very difficult. We have one in Paris, the light rig opportunity. It is kind of difficult, and we actually just started in the roof. So it's behind like layers of trespassing. So we're trying to do it a little bit more in that style. So we say that the really hard opportunities may be further in or something like that. But we try to vary them. So yeah. Does that answer your question? Do you mean like categories, like saying level, like this is difficult, this is more?
And if the player completes a difficult opportunity, he's rewarding differently at the end of the mission, right?
Okay,
well, the opportunities
like
are all, I think they give the same amount of points to your XP when you complete them. So they're not differentiated in that way, no.
But they could have more challenges associated to them.
Yes, there could be challenges, yeah, that's true.
So if it's long and complicated, there's probably more challenges associated. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have one up front.
I just want to ask, I was speaking to someone yesterday, and I didn't know about this, but there was a certain amount of controversy that was generated by Eidos stroke Square Enix appropriating the Black Lives Matter thing for the DS6 game that's coming out. Like, it's called All Lives Matter. I don't know too much about it, but with regards to like the political climate, how much of what's going in the real world, how much of that affects the design of your games? For example, obviously it has like you shooting a woman in the neck and you assassinating like a black person.
Yes.
So I just want to know, like,
I think that's a very, 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 very good question. And
thank you.
As everyone, we are also just people, right? And I believe that this game and this character he is an anti-hero, right? So what we do is that we actually give the moral dilemma to you as a player, because the people that we are going after in the story are the bad guys of our universe. So what we do is that we actually hand the responsibility of the mission, kind of how you perform it. That's your kind of morale, because everything is designed in a way so you don't have to kill innocent people. Again, that it is something we are in this moral zone of how do we go about this. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. It's just like there's just so much blowback that's happening for like.
Yes.
I totally
people
understand
have too much time on their hands.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Anyone else? Everyone over there?
Someone over there. Yeah.
Hi. Basically, I was wondering, because you showed how the users kind of interacted when they didn't have the prologue with the level.
Yes.
They just went in and killed the character. How did it change when you added the prologue? Did you have to do some, blocking gates as well? Because initially they could just walk through the main entrance and just kill the character. Did they instantly know after the prologue to not do that, or did you also change the level design?
Well, what we typically see when a seasoned player plays the mission, when they have knowledge about how to approach the game, is that they rarely actually enter through the main gate at the first thing, right? That they'll know that the target is just in there just by looking at the thing, right? So they will seek out the surroundings. So the example I showed was kind of like the worst case. Of course, we saw people who were infiltrating and experiencing and playing around with the game, but we didn't change the. There was one thing we learned from the alpha, and that it was if you went right, there was this place where we had a fence that was guarded, and what would happen there was that people would approach the fence, get told off by the sentry guys, and then because the layout was a dead end, they wouldn't turn back. They would actually just keep pushing forward and then climbing the fence and then getting into a lot of trouble. So what we did was that we pushed the fence a bit back because there was an opening in the garden kind of fence, so they could get up to the guy, get dismissed, so you can't enter here, and just continue to their right. So there were these kind of changes where we discovered some bottlenecks, but we don't want to block you off in this setting here.
Oh, yeah.
This will have to be the last question.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for a great talk. So my question is, how do you go about user testing these things? Because it's a very big sandbox, and as I say, there's lots of stuff you can do, and everything interacts with each other. And I mean, you could watch a video of every player playing the game, but that's probably a lot of work, and you probably had a lot of alpha testers.
Yeah, that will also take many years.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you go about that, and do you have like some metrics that you go about, or do you do like just kind of a questionnaire testing?
Do you want to?
We do several different kinds of user testing, right? The ones that I talked about, the rapid ones. We also have bigger user surveys where we interview a lot of people. They play the game and there's surveys, and then we also have we send out questionnaires to the players and ask them directly, and we also have a user panel where we are in kind of continuous dialogue with the players about how they do it. So that's the user testing thing about it. Anything else to add?
Well, that, and then we also, like, we're doing an episodic game, and that means people are playing the game in their own homes right now. So we have a very, we are really trying to listen to the community, and we spend a lot of time just finding out what people are saying and how are they feeling, do they like it, what don't they like. And we have a lot of people who's spending a lot of time on that. So both with user research, but also just listening to our players.
Great. That was the last question.
That was
Thank
the
you
last
for coming.
question, yeah.